people were saying the same thing about CM Punk. Oh, yeah, CM Punk is here now. Oh, great. Of course he's going to get a big pop when he debuts at Survivor Series. Talk to me in a couple months. Well, look, he started Survivor Series, right? We're closing in on June. So I've got December, January, February, March, April, May, and June. We're closing in on 7 months of CM Punk in the WWE. And I would argue that CM Punk today is even more interesting than CM Punk when he first showed up at Survivor Series. And that includes the fact that a catastrophe happened. CM Punk being injured in his first televised match at the Royal Rumble can only be described as catastrophic. It caused everyone to rethink what they were going to do with one of the biggest superstars in the industry and a huge investment that's been put in this person. It made them rethink everything about what was being advertised as the biggest show in the history of wrestling. And still, WrestleMania 40 ended up as one of the best WrestleManias ever. And CM Punk is in the middle of one of the most interesting stories on television when we've got a television show that is full of interesting stories. So if you were sitting there going, okay, CM Punk's getting a big pop for coming out at Survivor Series, but we'll see. 6 months from now, we'll see. I just don't think people care. Well, clearly that wasn't the case. So if it wasn't true then, maybe we can shift our way of thinking. Now, if WWE gets to a place where they are hot-shotting things and not paying things off, I have no problem with that. If they haven't earned the benefit of the doubt, don't give it to them. But if they have, what can you do? And when you talk about CM Punk, he is in the middle of a rivalry that is, I believe, even more interesting than people thought it would be. And we were all married to the idea of CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. Now, there's nothing that I want to see more than Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk. So on Monday night, Drew McIntyre comes out after losing at Clash at the Castle. Talked about this in the reaction pod to that with Megan Morant and everything. After losing at Clash at the Castle, he comes out halfway through the show, and he's in the ring cutting his promo, and people are chanting at him, CM Punk, CM Punk, and they're booing him. He just lost. For the second time, got screwed at Clash at the Castle. This time, it was even closer to where he's from. It was in Scotland. And he told everybody he was doing it for his wife. He told everybody he couldn't lose. He told everybody this, and he lost. So he comes out on Raw, and he goes, CM Punk. And they're booing. They're chanting CM Punk. And he's hesitating. He's pacing. And he goes, CM Punk. And they're booing again. And then that's when he says, I can't do this anymore. Screw this company. I quit. That moment, I felt, shades of Bret Hart, 1997. After returning to the WWE, things were not going his way because another rebel named Stone Cold Steve Austin was getting all of the attention. You could compare this. You could compare very much what's going on with Drew and Punk to what happened with Bret and Steve Austin, where Drew is in the Bret Hart position and Punk is in the Steve Austin position. Now, Punk is not this up-and-comer. It's totally different roles, but the idea that Drew has a moral issue with what CM Punk is doing, and he's looking at the company that he works for, and the company is siding with CM Punk. Because, so I like so there's a for sure comparison there. Drew and Punk, Bret and Austin. And much like Bret had enough, and he acknowledged, Bret was one of the first to really acknowledge Vince McMahon as the owner of the company as he was sitting there on the commentary table. Drew is walking backstage, and he goes into Gorilla, and he calls Triple H Paul, and he goes, no, I'm done. I'm done. And he's yelling at Paul, at Triple H. Paul Triple H Levesque. And then he exits. And I love the little details. Because usually when backstage scenes are shot, first of all, up until recently, they didn't go into Gorilla at all. You remember they would shoot in the hall. They would stop at the curtain that leads to Gorilla. And then they would pick up again at the entryway. They would never show Gorilla. Now, it's a full part of the production. And I think it benefits greatly. I think people are fascinated. People have heard about Gorilla position for so long. I think people are absolutely fascinated as to what goes in there, who's sitting at what desk. Us wrestling fans love details. And here's the other detail about that Drew McIntyre quit walk-off segment. They made it look even better and more realistic because they didn't clear the hallway. Usually, you watch these backstage shots, and the hallway's been cleared. You know, you might have a couple of extras sitting around, but if there is active talent, it's because they're doing something in the background. Meaning, if you see active talent, it's because we're planting the seeds of Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio. Or if you see active talent, it's because Sonya Deville is talking to Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark, or whatever it is. But it's purposefully. Other than that, they clear the hallways. In this instance, the hallway wasn't cleared at all. It wasn't cleared, and it wasn't lit. It wasn't lit to shoot, which is this tiny little detail that I thought was excellent. But you could see like Jey Uso in the background. You could see guys warming up. Like, it was not prepared for a shoot. And it made it feel like this was a shoot, brother. No, it just made it feel good. I thought it was a good detail that they added in. You know, we're back in the everything counts situation because Drew, it's not just like Drew is saying, I'm really mad that CM Punk interfered in my match in Glasgow, and so I quit. That's not the only thing that Drew's mad about. Drew is mad in a way that we would be mad if we felt that we were being undervalued and mistreated at work. Drew is not just mad because CM Punk showed up in Scotland. You would almost expect that CM Punk would show up in Scotland. Drew is mad at the same stuff that Wade Barrett was mad when he was doing the post show. Drew is mad that after what happened to him, after he got screwed, instead of having sympathy or empathy or some kind of acknowledgement that what happened should not have happened, Triple H, Paul, as Drew called him, went into the press conference and said, we are so happy that Phil Brooks is here. We are so happy that CM Punk is here. He said this was the CM Punk that I've been waiting for. This was the CM Punk I wanted then. I love this CM Punk. Paraphrase. And Drew's like, what? After what he did to me? And then Michael Cole's on commentary. How exciting is it? CM Punk's going to be back on SmackDown. Everybody watch SmackDown on Friday because CM Punk is there. He's the best. Michael Cole, the same Michael Cole that's been calling Drew McIntyre a hypocrite every week on Monday Night Raw, is like hyping up that CM Punk is back. So Drew McIntyre's looking around. He's like, you got commentary putting over CM Punk. You have Paul Levesque talking about how CM Punk is the greatest employee that there's ever been. And I'm getting screwed and nobody's helping me. I'm out. It's all part of why he left. So then this announcement gets made. CM Punk said it at the press conference. I'm hoping that I'm going to get cleared. I'm not going to be at Raw on Monday because I'm going home to see my doctor. But I will be at Raw in Chicago on SmackDown in Chicago on Friday. And he shows up to SmackDown and they have the bloodline interaction that we talked about at the beginning of the show. But first, CM Punk talks about Drew McIntyre and he does something that's very ironic. He goes, Drew McIntyre, or he says Solo Sikoa is going to jump me in Chicago. Solo Sikoa is going to attack me in Chicago. Meanwhile, Punk just attacked Drew McIntyre in Scotland. So Punk can screw Drew McIntyre in his hometown, but Punk can't be screwed with in Punk's hometown. Very interesting irony there, which again, to me, is one of those little details. So Drew gets mentioned at the beginning of this promo with Punk gloating about what he had done and talking about how everybody loves him for it and getting Chicago to cheer him for it and doing the whole thing. But then we move on to the Bloodline stuff. Then we move on to the Cody stuff. We never hear if Punk is cleared or not, and we just kind of go away. SmackDown continues on. We get a couple matches here. We get a couple angles there. And then Kayla Braxton, who is leaving the WWE, we find out on social media. I can't wait to see what Kayla Braxton is going to do next. Kayla Braxton is interviewing Grayson Waller, and here comes DIY. So Grayson Waller and DIY are having this argument. And they're standing in front of the garage door to the loading dock of the Allstate Arena. And we just hear thud, thud, thud against that loading dock garage door. And everybody, they're like, I don't know what that was, but they're still arguing. And so somebody opens the door. And the first thing we see is CM Punk laid out on the ground, a bloody mess. And then because Chicago is an hour before East Coast time, it's not almost 9 o'clock in Chicago. It's only, 7:50. So the sun is still out, and it's lighting from behind. And you see this amazing backlit, almost shadowy figure. You see these legs for the boots and the legs, and they're standing in front of this downed, bloodied, beaten, and battered CM Punk. And as the door opens, more of the body is exposed. And even with that backlight, even through the shadows, we can see that Drew McIntyre is standing over CM Punk. Apparently his employee pass still works. Drew McIntyre hoists CM Punk on his back and walks him, again, in a single shot. Whoever's idea it was to use a steady cam and single shots, it's much more difficult to do, but man, is it engaging as a viewer to watch. So it just immediately you're locked into it. It is so awesome. And you also just see everything going on. And that's the vibe of WWE right now. So much happening all at once. And so Drew McIntyre walks all the way out to the arena floor and drops CM Punk right there on the entryway. And a stretcher comes to take CM Punk away, but not before Drew McIntyre can take the bracelet off of CM Punk's wrist. Now that bracelet, you could see in the opening segment, and some people on the internet did a zoom in of it. That bracelet was one of those beaded bracelets, and it said, I believe, his wife's name and his dog's name, two of the most important beings that a man can have in his life, his wife and his dog. Those are the two people that'll have your back no matter what, and the dog's not even a person. Drew McIntyre took that bracelet off his wrist, put it in his pocket, cursed out Nick Aldis, and let them take CM Punk away. And as they took CM Punk and his Jordan 1s away on that stretcher, Drew turned his social media back on. That's how you knew it was serious. When he quit the WWE on Monday, he turned off his Twitter, he turned off his Instagram, all the things that gave birth to this version of Drew McIntyre, to this character that Drew McIntyre is right now. It was given birth to via social media, and he shut it all down. But it came right back up when he laid out CM Punk. And Punk asked for this. Punk took it there. But what's interesting about all of this, what's interesting about the CM Punk Drew McIntyre confrontation on SmackDown, as good as it wasn't going to happen if Drew McIntyre had won the World Heavyweight Championship. If Drew McIntyre had won the World Heavyweight Championship at Clash at the Castle, they could have had a confrontation. Drew could have beaten down CM Punk, whatever. But if Drew McIntyre had won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at Clash at the Castle, he would have no motivation to go that extra mile and to beat CM Punk absolutely bloody and leave him in a heap to the point that we don't know if he's okay or not. We don't know if he's cleared. We don't know if he was cleared or if he's still cleared. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a lot of people, because when it first happened, people weren't thrilled. There were a lot of people that weren't thrilled that Drew McIntyre had not won at Clash at the Castle, that Drew McIntyre had lost the title match. They thought he was going to leave the champion. And I didn't like it, but then some people, I didn't like that people said this. I didn't mind that he lost. I didn't like that people said, well, that feud doesn't need the title. Because it's an oversimplification. It's not, you haven't really thought about that. No feud needs a title. A title can add to or subtract, whatever. But no, But there was this thing that they said, well, the reason Drew didn't win is because his story with CM Punk doesn't need the title. Okay, but that's a very sort of not well thought out. I mean, it's a very base level understanding. Because the truth is, it's not that Punk versus Drew doesn't need the world title. The truth is that Punk versus Drew needs to not have the world title. That not having the world title is what took this rivalry from a 7 to a 9. And we could do this at a 7, and that would be fine. But making this a 9, making this an ultimate grudge match, making this a match that people are clamoring for, that no matter what you've got going on with the World Heavyweight title, with the WWE Undisputed Championship, with the Bloodline, with Uncle Howdy, with all this going on, still, when you finally announce that Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk one-on-one is going to happen, the reason that you could argue that without any bells or whistles, that's the main event, is because it's not for the world title. And if it was for the world title, I don't think you could argue that it would be the main event, ironically. And it's rare that that happens. But CM Punk costing Drew McIntyre the world title took things too far. And it led to Drew McIntyre taking things even farther. So now we're at the point of no return. If Drew McIntyre is the World Heavyweight Champion, Drew versus CM Punk is a wrestling feud. If CM Punk cost Drew McIntyre the world title at Clash at the Castle, it's a blood feud. And that's what we've got with Drew and CM Punk, and that's why we're completely locked in